Good afternoon. Welcome to EduSet Network. Friend, as you know, we are having discussion on sociological theory. Today we have discussion on another sociological theory, that is critical perspective theory of sociology. So far we have discussed positivism, functional theory, and many other theory which have given shape to the contemporary times. So we'll try to understand in present society how this theory can be applied. And for discussion on this very topic, we have in studio Dr. Subhas Mahapatra. He teaches in Delhi University. He has published 2 books and delivers lecture on different forum and also in different institutions of repute like IIPA, Lal Bahadur Shastri Academy of Administration. So his knowledge and experience certainly will help us to understand the critical theory, or we say critical perspective in sociology. So on your behalf, I welcome him for EduSet lecture. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, coordinator.
My colleagues all over the country and the students. We have discussed so far about positivism, different frontiers of functional analysis in sociology, and today's lecture I'll be devoting to understanding conflict as a perspective on reflecting on varieties of social realities. How is conflict foundation to social reality? How different sociologists look at conflict to understand various issues, problems, crises, negotiations persistent in social life. When one talks about conflict as endemic to social life, a series of names appears. Sociological imagination of conflict, understanding the relevance of conflict, can be attributed to sociology of Karl Marx. Subsequently, Weber reflects on conflict. Randall Collins reflects on conflict. You have Dahrendorf reflecting on conflict. You have entire critical sociological tradition reflecting on conflict. You have functional conflict school founded by Kozer and Glockman. Also, you find out conflict is explained in a different way by Bourdieu. Conflict is also found out, mentioned in contemporary sociological theories like feminism, environmentalism, Dalit sociology, and also postmodern tradition. Therefore, bringing all these theories together and talking about their relevance and significance to explain conflict as a foundation to sociological inquiry is potentially a sociological challenge. However, I will try my best to give you some basic understanding of conflict and what is the relevance of conflict to understand social structure, social relationship, social change. I will be reflecting on that, and how society changes, and corresponding to that, the basic orientation of conflict tradition is also changing in sociology. I'll be throwing some light on that. Let me first discuss with you what conflict actually means. Conflict means two different bodies of people driven by distinctive ideas, different intent, or driven by different interest. They stand opposite to each other. Therefore, foundation to conflict may be the conflict of ideas, conflict of interest, or conflict of intent. Conflict is always considered as a foundation to social change. If you look into functionalist theory, functionalists overemphasize on persistent order, continuity of the society. Conflict theory always talks about social progress in relation to change that is grounded on dialectics of interest. The whole idea of dialectics of interest is centrality to Marxian theory of conflict. Marx looks into evolution of human history, starting from primitive communism stage to slave society or ancient stage, to feudal stage, to capitalist stage, and ultimately develops socialism and finally communism. Marx tells the progress of human history is a product of conflict between two opposite classes. In slave society, you have masters and slaves. Feudal society, lords and serfs. And in capitalist society, bourgeois and proletariats. These two different bodies of classes stand dialectical to each other because the dominant class do have control over means of production. By virtue of their control over means of production, they control over superstructural institutions that may include state and government, law, religion, education, family. So all these institutions located in the superstructure are controlled by the dominant class because of their domination on economic base. As a result, in every class society, two opposite classes make appearance. One having complete domination over every institutional spheres of society, and others are absolutely powerless because of lack of their control over the means of production and subsequently lack of control over other institutions in society. Therefore, these two polarized classes, they struggle for a space in social life. When the dominant class are striving for their domination, the subservient class come forward and they ask for their livelihood. So, in slave society you find out slaves are asking for livelihood. Feudal society also control over land are becoming the primary issues, for which the have-nots in society, the subservient class in society, they get mobilized and primarily fight a war against the dominant class. However, the conflict in capitalism is qualitatively different from the conflict we notice in earlier historical stages. Marx tells conflict are driven by ideology and interest as well. He tells that when ideology and interest are fused together, it gives rise to the growth of true class consciousness. In case of capitalist mode of production, Marx finds out that alienation is most fundamental factor for which workers never relate themselves to the work environment. The process of production, the production primarily, entire production, they don't identify themselves with the production system and they are alienated themselves from their self and society. Therefore, structured alienation, appropriation of surplus value of labor, acceleration of commodification of production gives rise to dehumanization. So, therefore, capitalism produces a kind of dehuman condition where a worker is working not because of the fact he is enjoying it. The entire process of production is becoming routinized, monotonous. Work is no longer a form of enjoyment to the worker. More the time he is spending on work, less the time he is spending on his family and immediate primary groups. So, a form of disenchantment develops, and more a worker is primarily producing, more worthless he is becoming in the market. The value of labor is increasing in the market, but the value of laborers is declining. Therefore, capitalism creates a kind of pathological condition which is not rewarding or satisfying to man. And Marx goes on to say that capitalism is a system of production where poet, priest, performers are all reduced into the soldiers of private army. So, therefore, all people belonging to their false identity, all people carrying their false identity now primarily come together and they consider their plight, their sufferings, their disillusionment are created by the conditions to which they are forced to enter into. And that condition is only benefiting to capitalists. Their self-centric interest. Therefore, driven by this true consciousness, all people carrying different kinds of identity, coming from their class position, occupational structure, they homogenize themselves. And this homogenization of ideas give rise to polarization of society, and that is intensifying conflict in society, and that conflict gives rise to the breakdown of capitalism. Therefore, conflict is forwarding social change. Conflict is foundation to social progress, and that conflict can be driven by true consciousness or false consciousness. So, therefore, ideology is foundation to conflict, and if that ideology is homogenizing people together, giving them a space to have control over means of production, subsequently over state apparatus, then obviously people will be liberated from the bondage of domination. Industries will not be producing for the class interest. The varieties of goods and commodities produced by industry will be distributed among the masses. Therefore, quality of life of all should be driven by the principle of equality. All industries will be controlled by the state or by the cooperatives, and state and cooperatives will be controlled by every individual. Therefore, distinction between individual and state will perish away. Collective happiness will be guaranteed. All will be working on the basis of their capability. As a result, every possible needs of the man will be gratified by the availability of resources under the control of the state. Though he is talking about the idea of state will be withering away in socialism, so he considers that state dominated by bourgeois will disappear, and state will be the domain of everybody. Every man will be enjoying his freedom. Every man's comfort, luxury will be guaranteed by the state. Man will no longer be self-centric. He will be living for state, society. He will be developing negotiation with others, and he will be dying for society. Therefore, ultimate happiness will be guaranteed to man in case of communism. Therefore, Marx is always providing a progressive view of society, talking about the significance of conflict in social life. This theory of Marx was revisited by many scholars after the death of Marx. And one such person who is looking into conflict not as a historic phenomena, but as an institutional phenomena, structural phenomena, is Max Weber. Therefore, Marxian theory of conflict is talking about the polarized conflict, not routine conflict. It is giving more importance on conflict driven by ideology than on conflict driven by interest. Marx makes a distinction between false class consciousness and true class consciousness. Weber is differing from Marx. He considers that conflict is present in different domains of social life. Conflict is not primarily polarized in character, and conflict can bring forward varieties of changes, microscopic, mesoscopic, and macroscopic. To understand Weberian explanation of conflict, we must have to get into his theory of social stratification. In his theory of Weber's stratification, he tells that there are present multiple dimensions to inequality in society. Inequality has many facets. It is practically impossible to understand every dimension to inequality in human society. Therefore, he is primarily constructing an ideal type pertaining to stratification study, giving importance on class, status and power. And in every sphere of stratification, how is conflict taking place? He is explaining that in detail. And conflict is not contributing for the change of structure, breakdown of existential structure. The consequence of conflict is highly unpredictable, but at the same time, conflict is unavoidable as well. Therefore, conflict need to be studied through sociological research. Conflict should not be judged from a value-centric perspective. Therefore, whoever makes conflict as a domain of sociological research, sociological study, as against Marx, conflict is foundation to revolution and social transformation. Weber tells that if one looks at class, class ordinarily means a group of people having identical position in market situation. In modern industrial society, there are present multiple classes, but all these classes cannot be identified in detail. Therefore, again he is constructing an ideal type on the class, dividing classes of modern society into 4 different types, such as propertied upper class, white collar workers, petty bourgeois and unskilled laborers. He tells every class can be engaged in conflict with every other class. Propertied upper class may be engaged in conflict with petty bourgeois when they find out that petty bourgeois are not supplying them the finished products at a lower price. Petty bourgeois may be bargaining with big manufacturers, propertied upper class, in search of more primarily value for their produce. Similarly, white collar workers, those who are the custodians of the interest of the propertied workers, may be controlling, guiding the working class laborers in a very big way. Therefore, when there is a labor unrest in the enterprise, nowhere the propertied upper class are there in the picture. It is the managerial class who are targeted. So, conflict is inevitable between managerial class and the working class, petty bourgeois, upper class, and propertied upper class can also be engaged in conflict with the people holding the middle class position, or they are primarily white collar workers. Therefore, any class for different reasons may be engaged in conflict with any other class for at different points of time, and the intensity of conflict, durability of conflict, outcome of conflict will be variable from one situation to another situation. Therefore, it is extremely difficult to predict the outcome of the conflict on the classes, on the institution and on the other institutions and larger society. Therefore, conflict is present. That is a paramount matter of sociological interest. Therefore, conflict need to be studied in different institutional context. So also the outcome of conflict. Therefore, conflict should not be analyzed in terms of values. Conflict should be analyzed in terms of their actual presence and actual outcomes. Also, Weber tells conflict can be studied from a historical perspective and cultural perspective. You can look into the history of agrarian India. What kind of conflict that has taken place among different agrarian classes. You can make a comparison between agrarian conflict then and agrarian conflict today. Therefore, in a beautiful manner, one can use this Weberian framework of conflict to understand peasant movement in case of colonial India and farmers movement in contemporary India. So, how conflict is primarily reshaping itself, reflecting on the changing social structure of society. Or one can make a distinction between conflict, industrial conflict during primarily colonial period and post-colonial period. Weber then goes on to explain parties. He tells parties refer to an organized group action intended to capture power. And within every party, there are present rulers and the supporters, leaders and the supporters. Therefore, supporters support to the cause of leaders, because once leader come to power, their interest will be gratified. Therefore, there is a kind of harmony of interest between the rulers and supporters belonging to a particular party. One party is engaged in conflict with another party to primarily capture power within the organization or within the social structure of society. Therefore, parties are always engaged in conflict, and these conflicts are based upon issues, matters of concern. Thus, Weber goes on to say that implicit goal of all the parties is to capture power. Therefore, power is centrality to Weberian analysis, as it tells that basic objective of conflict between the parties is to capture power. To explain the universality of conflict, he tells, parties are present in every sphere of society, because party means an organized group of people that is intending to capture power. Therefore, within the family, we may find out two groups of people are present. Each group is trying to dominate over the other. Therefore, there is conflict. If you go to organizations, you find out there are present two groups, three groups engaged in conflict with each other in search of primarily domination. Also, in the nation state, you have organized parties which are primarily bringing forward manifesto, going for electoral campaign, making promises to the people, driven by different kinds of ideology, contesting in election, getting engaged in conflict. Therefore, conflict is present in every sphere of society. But why conflict? What is the duration of conflict? What is the outcome of conflict that need to be explained from a sociological standpoint? Weber also tells that in society there is another space for conflict, is for status. He tells there are status groups present in society who enjoy highest degrees of privilege, highest degrees of respect from the masses. And always people make an attempt to enter into these exclusive positions in social life. But the status groups being closed groups, despite people's improvement in position in other structures of social life, they find it extremely difficult to get into these status groups. However, Weber finds out that with the rise of modernity, class becomes more significant than the status of a position. Therefore, people, those who are successful in their class structure, experiencing mobility, getting access over market, so these people can buy status items from the market. They can redefine their lifestyle. By redefining their lifestyle because of their money power, by holding different positions of importance in social life, having control over power in a very big way, so these people, they can primarily get entry into the status groups. Therefore, the whole idea of new status group will evolve in case of modern society, creating space for the successful people in case of modern society. So therefore, the people belonging to old status position, new entrant to the status groups, they may have conflict with each other. As a result of which, status groups will be crumbling in modern society, and money will be matter of great significance in case of modern industrial capitalist societies. Therefore, Weber's understanding of conflict is different from Marxian understanding of conflict, because Weber believes that conflict can take place within a party within the democratic structure of polity. Conflict can take place within industry or within the industrial society. Therefore, conflict is a routine phenomena, regular phenomena. It is occurring in social life in a very big way, in every possible context. Therefore, one cannot ignore conflict while understanding society. Therefore, whoever is questioning to conventional sociology, that is talking about how society is integrated, how there is a dependency between parts present, interdependency, how common value consensus is present in society, whoever tells that there is primarily problem, there is routine conflict present in society. So therefore, sociology should get away from the study of consensus to the study of conflict and understand multiple dimensions to conflict, to have a reflexive understanding about social life, either in microstructure or in mesostructure or in macrostructure. So therefore, there are two different schools or traditions which are discussing about conflict and its outcome in two distinctive manners. You know, Ralph Dahrendorf is writing a book. The title of the book is Class and Class Conflict in Industrial Society. He is borrowing ideas from Max Weber and offering critique to Marxian theory, but giving a new dimension to conflict study. You know, he tells that in every institutional structure, there is present domination and subordination. And the people, those who are dominant, they pursue their interest. And subordinate people also pursue their interest. Therefore, two groups of people, while pursuing their interest, they have to negotiate with each other for the persistence and continuity of the institution or the groups. He gives more importance on roles and status. Within an institutional structure, a person is holding a status, and befitting to that status, he is playing his roles. While playing his roles, he has expectations. He has endemic interest that he should be visible. He should be playing his roles in such a way that he should be rewarded. So the way he wants to play his roles, perform his task, exhibit his creativity, that is not primarily fulfilled for the reason that within that institutional structure, there are primarily present dominants. Dominants are always giving instructions and direction to the subordinates, pertaining to how they should be playing their roles. As a result of which, in many situations, the subordinates, those who are present in the institutional structure or the groups, so they primarily find themselves in an alienating situation, suffocating situation. So when they locate themselves in a suffocating situation, so they primarily go for mobilization of the like-minded people, those who are equally powerless, equally subordinated for different reasons. As a result of which they debate and discuss on the conditions of work. They discuss about how things can be primarily made better. So this kind of dialogues among the people belonging to common status, belonging to common position, give rise to the growth of quasi-groups. Suppose teachers are discussing about how the university system should be primarily organized, how syllabus should be formulated. If they are discussing that without constituting a group, they constitute a quasi-group. Subsequently, these quasi-groups, they may be having a common interest, common matter of concern. When that common interest and common matter of concern is bringing them together, promoting a kind of homogeneity amongst them, they constitute an interest group. Therefore, one can be a member of varieties of interest groups. As a teacher, one can be member of Delhi University Teachers Association. As a buyer, one can be a member of the Consumer Forum. So one can be a member of different kinds of interest group to primarily play his roles effectively in different group and institutional situations. Now, when this interest group finds out that their interests are not sufficiently articulated, their roles are not effectively played, because of the structure is giving them certain kind of restrictions, enforcement, coercive guidelines, then they get engaged in conflict with the other group. Therefore, within every institution in a routine manner, there is present conflict, and that conflict is not illegitimate conflict. That conflict is legitimate conflict. Conflict is following the rules of law. Conflict is highly regulated. Conflict is primarily organized, and the groups engaged in conflict are the part of the total social structure. Through conflict, they try to bring change in their own life, change in the institutional relationship. So therefore, outcome of conflict is different. But conflict is present in every sphere of society. Therefore, following the position of Weber, he tells that most of the conflict is centering around the question of domination and subordination, superordination and subordination. So therefore, conflict is greatly a quest for having power that one is not experiencing while holding different positions in the institutional structures of the society. He tells that conflict is bringing the like-minded people together. Conflict is developing, glorifying a new kind of ideology. Conflict is redefining the working environment within the institution. And conflict is a foundation to progress and change. Therefore, one should not be worried about conflict. One should know how conflict is an endemic part of modern society. Within enterprise there is conflict, within family there is conflict, within political structure there is conflict. Therefore, conflict is present in every sphere of society, and conflict is not going to bring forward revolution in society. The basic objective of conflict is to develop a situation that is acceptable, a situation where the ideas of all can be primarily cooked together, a system which is purely hierarchical, therefore people are questioning to it. Therefore, conflict is having a series of societally significant, institutionally relevant, and personally satisfying roles that one must have to study than just primarily talking about conflict is homogenized phenomena that can bring revolution in society and contribute for the crisis of society, breakdown of society in search of the rise of a new social order. Therefore, Dahrendorf's understanding of conflict is talking about the possibility of conflict in every society. It's not communist society, as Marx said, are devoid of conflict. So conflict being present in every institution, present being primarily in every group. Where these groups are present, there is conflict, and these groups are present as much in case of modern capitalism, that much these groups are present in case of socialistic societies. Therefore, conflict is universal, and that universality of conflict should be a foundation to sociological inquiry than being primarily considering conflict as a foundation to or guideline to the revolutionary social change. Another person I will be introducing here, who is taking keen interest in conflict study, is Pierre Bourdieu. Bourdieu is questioning to Marxian theory, though he is not parting away from Marxian theory. Bourdieu tells that capital is foundation to conflict in every society. But capital he defines as one that what is having exchange power in the market. Marx tells capital is money, but Bourdieu tells capital is having multiple dimension. Therefore, capital is not just money. Capital means something that has got exchange value in the market. He speaks about three kinds of capital. One is cultural capital or knowledge as a form of capital. Second, he is talking about economic capital, means wealth as a form of capital. Then he is talking about symbolic capital, power, influence, position as a form of capital. He tells in every society there is present a dominant class. And this dominant class is segmented into three different groups. One are the owners of cultural capital. Second, the owners of economic capital. And third, the owners of symbolic capital. The owners of cultural capital are mostly the intelligentsia. They try to have control over culture industry, university education, mass media. So they try to have control over culture industry, and knowledge being a form of capital to them, they always try to primarily have domination or control over this knowledge to perpetuate their domination. Similarly, the owners of economic capital try to have control over wealth, control over industry, so that they will be maintaining their status quo. Similarly, administrators, politicians do have control over symbolic capital, and they try their best to create conditions through which they can maintain their status quo in society. Very often in society, a particular segment of the dominant class having control over one kind of capital is using that capital to get access over another kind of capital. This trespassing from one domain to another domain is accepted by the other dominant class to a limited extent. But if the dominant segment of a particular class is trying to outrightly displace other segment of dominant class, that may give rise to conflict. For example, when an industrialist is sending his child for higher education to Oxford and Cambridge, so this can be indicated as a situation where economic capital is converted into cultural capital, so that the industrialist can give a suitable employment to his child who is holding a primarily big qualification. So therefore, economic capital is converted or used to obtain cultural capital for the persistence of domination of the people dominating in economic sphere. Similarly, a teacher's child getting best of education possible through his family training, family support and so on, when getting a job in a big industry, he is not controlling over economic capital. They are exchanging his cultural capital in favor of economic capital. So these kind of exchanges are acceptable. As a result, three segments of dominant class, they are operating in different sphere. To a limited extent, they give permission for the exchange of one kind of capital to another kind of capital, but complete encroachment into their domination is never ever acceptable. When the segment of a dominant class is entering into another segment of a dominant class, which is challenging to the position of the segment of dominant class present in the other sector, that may lead to conflict. Therefore, conflict between different segments of dominant class is a routine phenomenon. When the owners of cultural capital find out their control over the cultural capital is slowly shrinking, to bring that cultural capital into their control, they bring reforms in education, change the structure of syllabi. So, every segment of dominant class is always making plans, deliberations to ensure its control over that particular form of capital is never ever primarily slipping out of their control and hand. Therefore, every segment of dominant class is engaged in boundary maintenance, drawing strategies, making plans, going for reproduction of that particular capital from one generation to another generation to maintain their status quo. So, therefore, conflict between different segments of dominant class is a continuous phenomena, and at the same time, every section of dominant class using different mechanisms try to reinforce their domination in that particular sector of the society. Also, Bourdieu tells every segment of dominant class, they have the fear that their control over that form of capital may be slipping out from their hand at a future date. Therefore, they are always engaged in exchanging the kind of capital they are holding in hand to obtain other capital, so that in some form or the other they can enter from one domain to another domain without losing out their significance. Hence, you will not be surprised to see professors are becoming ministers, contesting elections. Or you will be finding out technocrats may be getting into industry. So, these kind of exchanges are greatly possible in case of modern capitalist society. Therefore, Bourdieu categorically points out that conflict regularly taking place in different spheres of modern society are mostly invisible. Therefore, every segment of dominant class is greatly engaged in its own reproduction in a very continuous manner in case of modern society. Modern society glorifies the idea of equality, mobility, competition. As a result, many people belonging to lower class, they always make an attempt to improve their class position by going to schools, colleges, obtaining degrees, entering into job market. They try to improve upon their class position. In many situations, you will be noticing the people belonging to lower class, they are not highly successful in the spectrum of education. Bourdieu writes in a brilliant way. Those who are successful in the sphere of schools and colleges, they are not successful because they are talented. They are successful because they have this advantage of the capital which the working class children don't have. When a teacher's child is finding out school as an extension of family, because the language used there, mode of communication, structure of syllabi, kind of demand of the school on the child, when it is very acceptable to the child of a teacher, the language used, curriculum pattern, and the school work given to a working class child doesn't fit into his culture. Therefore, school will become an alienating experience for the child of lower class as against the child belonging to a teacher's family. Therefore, a teacher's child will be doing well in the school as against the child of the working class. Therefore, his cultural advantage is giving him academic advantage, as a result of which there is a social reproduction taking place through cultural reproduction. But 1 in a million belonging to social disadvantaged groups because of tenacity, hard work, commitment, despite all odds, 1 out of many may be successful as an entrepreneur, successful as a politician, administrator, or maybe primarily coming up as a successful media man or man in the university or colleges. So, these successful people will be primarily portrayed as the one, those who are benefiting from the modern society. Society will be re-glorifying its values. It's a land of equality of opportunity. It's distributing justice to everybody irrespective of their social positions. So therefore, Bourdieu interestingly tells, status quo is maintained, but at the same time, the people belonging to lower class, when they are becoming successful, holding important position, conflict is resolved. People are driven by this consciousness that modernity stands for equality, modernity stands for justice, modernity stands for mobility, and the classic example this kind of achievement or accomplishment in case of today's America would be Barack Obama. But Bourdieu is asking this question, how many people driven by this disadvantage are able to make it big in social life? Therefore, modernity is always making attempts to tell the people that without conflict they can achieve success. So therefore, this kind of falsified ideology is doing nothing than primarily perpetuation of social inequality. Therefore, he tells social reproduction, cultural reproduction is present in every society, though at times you find out there is a kind of mobility taking place in social life. Therefore, how strategies are adopted by the society to minimize the negative outcomes of conflict. So that is explaining in detail and talking about conflict between different segments of the dominant class, and at times conflict between subservient class and dominant class, and how conflict is negotiated in case of modern society. I will be introducing another conflict scholar, C. Wright Mills. C. Wright Mills is revisiting Marxian theory of alienation. Mills tells alienation is a form of human experience which is intensified with the growth of modern capitalism. He tells it is not only capitalism, but also in case of socialism, you find out modern technocratic society has given rise to the expansion of a large chunk of middle class or white collar workers. These white collar workers are experiencing alienation in a very big way. And alienation because they are not working to produce something to get immense satisfaction from out of it. So these people are working in a condition which is highly disciplined, and that disciplined condition is greatly determined and defined by the network of the bureaucratic structure of which they are a part. Therefore, when they are working, timing of work, the kind of work they have been doing, so these are all primarily external to them. And most importantly, their inner self that is motivating them, stimulating them to do something cannot be primarily expressed at the place of work, because entire process of work is so greatly mechanized, so greatly dehumanized. You have to do something as it is being spelled out to you, depending on the position you are holding. You cannot go for creativity, you cannot manifest innovation. So that is the design and structure of work taking place in primarily this modern technocratic society. As a result of which, millions of people all over the world, those who are getting education, entering into various kinds of occupation structure, they are disenchanted. So this form of disenchantment is compelling people to primarily take leave from the office and get out in search of recreation or holidays. And when they are going for recreation and holidays, holiday resorts are primarily coming up. And these resorts are once again, they are controlled by the capitalist class. Therefore, when they are at work, they are controlled by others. When they are going for holidaying also, going to market also for entertainment, recreation, or watching television also, they are also controlled by the choices and wills of others. Therefore, conflict in modern society is a product of alienation. Therefore, when we say that, okay, television is bringing for all stupid news to us, programs to us, market is becoming unreachable. In office, there is nothing but boredom is present, helplessness is present, isolation is present. So, these are primarily providing foundations to the elements of conflict or dissatisfaction or disenchantment. Therefore, he is differing from Marx on the ground that alienation is not a product of the work environment or the economic condition. Rather, alienation is a product of massive expansion of bureaucratic structure, massive expansion of media, massive expansion of science and technological discourses, where human freedom is not absolutely expressed effectively. So, therefore, C. Wright Mills tells the seeds for conflict is present everywhere. But man is so much dependent on this bureaucratic structure, expansion of primarily scientific, technological market, expansion of state. Man is so greatly dependent on them. He can only be engaged in conflict by bringing like-minded people together. So, therefore, the genesis of conflict, the contour of conflict is absolutely changing in case of modern society. Also, C. Wright Mills gives some kind of insight about power elites in America. There he is brilliantly talking about the fact that how different dominant sections of American society, like corporate heads, professional politicians, and the experts in the field of military services are coming together. They are getting homogenized in a very big way. And they are not only determining the destiny of American society, rather they are determining the destiny of the whole world. So, therefore, homogenization of elites, those who are controlling the state power, determining the choices and preferences of the masses, formulating varieties of laws, are becoming a source of isolation to the masses. And power elites, they define public policies and redefine further what is acceptable to the people and unacceptable to them. Good for people, bad for them. When they declare war, they justify it. When they are putting primarily economic bans on nations, they give justification to it. And their justification to events and conditions are expressed effectively by mass media. And people consume these ideas not by using their ideology, but by consuming the ideology of the state or ideology of the government. So, therefore, how every individual is suffering from different kind of suffocation, isolation, alienation. So, that is centrality to sociology of C. Wright Mills. In similar ways, structural Marxists are also talking about domination, subordination, conflict. Few names I will be bringing in here. One is Althusser and second is Gramsci. Althusser tells, deviating from Marx, that dominant class is controlling over the cultural industry. And this dominant class do not antagonize to the masses. In many situations, they formulate and enforce public policies which are gratifying to the interest of the masses. So, therefore, masses consider that their savior is the people, those who are holding power. Poverty alleviation measures you take into consideration. Take into consideration reservation policy. So, different kinds of programs are initiated by the custodians of the state that give a sense of happiness to the people belonging to subservient sections of the society. Therefore, buying their mind through mass media, through primarily family, through religious institutions, charitable organizations, giving them different kinds of concession in different spheres of the society. Dominant class are reaching the head and heart of the masses.
Okay. Sorry, sir, interrupt you. I have a question from Madhya Pradesh. Good afternoon, friend. Please ask your question.
हेलो
जी, सवाल पूछिए.
गुड आफ्टरनून सर.
जी, सवाल पूछिए.
सर सोशियोलॉजी में सबसे बेस्ट थिंकर कौन रहे हैं अभी तक के?
क्या है?
क्या फिर से सवाल पूछिए.
सोशियोलॉजी में अभी तक के सबसे बेस्ट थिंकर कौन रहे हैं सर, जिसके
अभी-
ऊपर आज की मॉडर्न सोशियोलॉजी डिपेंड है?
ओके, बेस्ट थिंकर सोशियोलॉजी में अब तक बेस्ट थिंकर कौन है?
देखिए सोशियोलॉजी में कोई थिंकर को आप बेस्ट नहीं बोल सकते हो, वर्स्ट नहीं बोल सकते हो. इंडियन कॉन्टेक्स्ट में आप मेरे को पूछेंगे, हमारे पास दो सोशियोलॉजिकल थिंकर्स हैं. एक तो डॉक्टर बाबा साहब आम्बेडकर हैं, दूसरा है महात्मा गांधी. दोनों का जो थिंकिंग अबाउट कास्ट सिस्टम, दे स्टैंड रिलीवेंट ऑन द बेसिस ऑफ देयर ओन मेरिट. गांधी जी का जो रिलीजन के ऊपर जो अपना आइडिया है, जो आम्बेडकर साहब का कास्ट के ऊपर आइडिया है, वो अपना अपना पोजीशन में सही है. सोशियोलॉजी में आज का डेट में आप देखेंगे एक पोस्ट मॉडर्न थ्योरी डेवलप हो रहा है. ये पोस्ट मॉडर्न थ्योरी बोलता है जो मार्केट एक्सपैंड हो रहा है, कंज्यूमरिज्म एक्सपैंड हो रहा है, टेलीविजन हर टाइप का एडवर्टाइजमेंट आपको दे रहा है, तो इसका लिमिटेशन क्या है? वो थ्योरी अपना जगह में सही है.
अच्छा, इसके बाद अगर चलें जैसे अंद्रे बेते और उनके बारे में
उनका
श्रीनिवास-
देखिए जितना सारे थ्योरिस्ट हैं अपना अपना नजरिया से सोशल सिचुएशन को देखते हैं.
ओके.
तो इनमें बेस्ट वोस्ट कोई नहीं हो सकता है.
हाँ, मतलब ये कहा जा सकता है कि एम एन श्रीनिवास से चलते
आप ये
अब तक-
बताए, आप ये देखेंगे, सपोज सोशियोलॉजी में देखेंगे, मार्क्स अपना थ्योरी दिया है. मार्क्सियन थ्योरी में वर्ल्ड में पूरा रिवॉल्यूशन हो गया.
ओके.
आजकल फेमिनिज्म चल रहा है, वुमेन एम्पावरमेंट कर रहा है. तो हर थ्योरी अपना अपना हिसाब से अपना अपना पोजीशन में दे स्टैंड टू बी इम्पोर्टेंट. So, I was discussing about Althusser and Gramsci. So, therefore, both of them advocate how dominant class do not dominate over the masses in a direct manner, for which conflict is not visible. And the basic concern of the dominant class is to see that conflict need to be minimized in society. Therefore, their domination is subjected to persistence and continuity. So, they make strategies. They control primarily mass media. They control over the educational institution. So, by controlling these industries, they ensure that people are not engaged in conflict against them and they are not rooted out from the position of domination in the power structure. So, therefore, how conflict is negotiated, how conflict is neutralized, how to avoid conflict, people are accommodated. So, this is being discussed by critical theorists in a very big way and structural Marxists in a very big way. My discussion would be incomplete if I don't give some reference about new left tradition in sociology who are looking into conflict. New left tradition developed in 1930s when Nazism, fascism, communism, they got momentum in different parts of the world. As a reaction to this kind of events and conditionalities, new left theory developed. New left theory is borrowing ideas from psychology, from Marxism, and they say that how in case of modern society, one will be noticing that dominant class in an implicit manner is controlling over the choices, over the needs, over the requirements of the people, and therefore there is a need for the people to come forward and understand the design of the state.
Okay. So, well friends, with these words, we conclude the lecture. I thank all of you for watching the lecture, and on behalf I thank Dr. Subhas Mahapatra for giving such an insightful lecture. Thank you very much.